Andrea stood at the window and watched the children playing in the playground. She had long dreamed of having her own children, but after 8 years of living with the man to whom she had devoted her best years, Andrea realized that he was a real scoundrel. Victor was often absent from home under the pretext of long business trips, constantly telling Andrea that as soon as he earned a lot of money, they immediately get married and think about having a child. But these words were just empty promises. The epiphany came unexpectedly. An unknown woman called and revealed that she had been Victor's real wife for 14 years and was raising his 2 children. Andrea failed to reach her former boyfriend, and he never showed up in her life again. A year passed. Andrea decided it was time to change something in her life. She sold the apartment in the capital, which she inherited from her grandmother, and moved to another city. She bought a new apartment there, and now she was looking for a job that would completely satisfy her. Memories made her heart ache, but Andrea reminded herself that she had decided to start her life all over again and to forget about what had happened before. She was sure that everything would be all right now. Suddenly the doorbell rang, and the woman flinched. She had no idea who it could be, since she didn't know anyone in this city. Andrea quietly went to the door and looked through the peephole. Behind the door stood a young woman with a baby cradle in her hands. Andrea opened the door and stared perplexedly at the stranger. "Here, take him. Thank your husband. Now you bring him up by yourself, and I have to arrange my own life," she shouted, and putting the cradle on the floor, quickly jumped into the elevator. "Listen, there must be some mistake," said Andrea, confusedly into the closing elevator doors, but the woman was already going down. Andrea didn't know what to do. Running down the stairs was stupid. She wouldn't make it in time anyway. Besides, this could all turn out to be some kind of ridiculous joke. She cautiously approached the cradle, opened the curtain and saw the sweet face of a peacefully sleeping baby. Some papers were lying next to the baby, and Andrea, picking up the cradle, returned to her apartment. The first thing she did was to look through the papers. In addition to the baby's documents, she found a note. "Paul, take care of the baby by yourself, along with your crazy wife. I don't need him. I lost a lot by giving birth to him. Next is your responsibility. Don't you dare look for me." Andrea looked at the baby and wondered what she would do with him next. At first, Andrea thought that fate finally handed her a gift and gave her the opportunity to become a mother. But then she decided that the child has a birth father, and it would be wrong not to even try to find him. She grabbed the phone to call the police, but then, realizing what away awaited the baby until his father would be found, she decided to try and track him down herself. But first, it was urgent to resolve the issue of his feeding and hygiene. While the baby was asleep, Andrea decided to go to the store to get everything she needed. Fortunately, it was a minute's walk from her home. After she secured the bed with chairs and put pillows and blankets around it, Andrea grabbed her purse and ran out of home. In the store, she quickly threw diapers, bottles and food into a cart and grabbed a few sets of baby clothes and ran to the cash register, praying that they agreed to let her through without queuing. Fortunately, she was able to pay quickly, and she rushed home as fast as she could. When she flew into the apartment, the baby was still asleep, and Andrea calmed down. She quickly made the formula for feeding and left the bottle to cool. Suddenly, The baby started crying and fidgeting unhappily. Andrea smiled as she looked at his unhappy face and immediately changed his diaper and dressed him in new clean clothes. After the boy happily ate, he fell asleep again, and Andrea began to think about how she could find his father. She decided to call the woman who had sold her that apartment. Andrea had never seen her husband, but she remembered that the woman had talked about her intention to divorce him. Andrea determinedly dialed the woman's number. "Barbara, I'm sorry to bother you at this hour, but it's very urgent. Is your husband's name Paul?" "Ex? Well, yes, why do you ask? Are you making plans for a divorced man?" "Then hurry up, or other women will take him quickly," replied Barbara rudely. Andrea tried to justify herself and explain why she needed Barbara's ex-husband, but she wouldn't listen, saying that she was no longer interested in his fate. "Excuse me, but I really need to know his phone number. Could you please give it to me?" "You're really sly," laughed Barbara, "and you seemed so modest on the surface. Do you think he'll be interested in you? Although who knows, he's a cheater. But you won't get his number from me," she shouted angrily and hung up. Andrea froze in shock. She could not have told such a woman about her husband's child. Who knows what she would think? She might hurt the boy too. Andrea wondered who else might know Paul's phone number and decided to go to the neighbours. But no one opened the door for her, and then the woman remembered that she had letters somewhere which were sent to the name of the previous owners of the apartment. She rushed to the closet, took out a bag of mail, and found one single letter addressed to Paul. It was an official response to a request to the internet service provider, and fortunately, it included Paul's cell phone number. Andrea called immediately, and when she heard a nice, soft man's voice on the phone, she told him the whole story about the baby. The man was clearly confused, but nevertheless he promised to come over. Not even an hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Paul. He was excited, and the first thing he did was request to see all the baby's documents. After a brief look through them, he sank tiredly on the sofa and put his arms around his head. "I don't know this woman, and I can't have any children on the side. It was always Barbara who was insanely jealous of me, who suspected me of cheating without any reason, and I couldn't convince her otherwise." And the man also said that he had always wanted children very much, and after Andrea's call, he almost went crazy. He knew, of course, that this was unbelievable and could not be true, but there was a faint hope for a miracle. They sat there for a while longer, drank coffee, and Paul called the police. When they arrived, the officers took a statement from Andrea and called an ambulance team, which took the baby to the hospital for an examination. Paul stayed a little longer. They had another coffee and then he left too. Andrea became insanely sad. She had managed to get attached to the baby, and most of all, she wanted to hold him now. A couple of days later, she could not stand it and went to the police to see if the baby's father had been found. At the police station, she was told that they had found the child's mother, who gave the father's name, but unfortunately, he had moved long ago to live in another country, and he had also rejected his son. Andrea started crying. The policeman tried to calm her down, assuring her that the orphanage would take good care of the baby. Finally, Andrea wiped away her tears and without a moment's hesitation went to the orphanage. When the orphanage head heard which baby Andrea would like to adopt, she shook her head negatively and said that yesterday they had been preparing documents for the adoption of this child. The woman suggested that Andrea choose any other child, but Andrea stubbornly insisted, swallowing her tears, that this was the only one she wanted. She was sure that fate had brought this boy to her, and she was not ready to give up her dream so easily. Suddenly the door opened, and Paul walked in. "This is the man who wants to adopt this baby," said the head of the orphanage. "What do you mean, also?" asked Paul. "Well, here's a woman asking for the same child." Paul approached Andrea and looked into her eyes and said, "We could adopt him together, if you marry me." The director looked at the two of them dazedly, while Andrea nodded her head in agreement. 7 years passed. Andrea and Paul had 2 more daughters. They recalled the story of their acquaintance more than once, and they sincerely believed that fate had brought them together.